From Alula, we're flying to Tunis in Tunisia. It will take almost 5 hours. We leave Saudi Arabia, flying over the Hejaz Mountains along the coast of the Red Sea. We fly by the tip of the Sinai Peninsula, with the Gulf of Aqaba on the right and the Gulf of Suez on the left. Then up the Gulf of Suez to the southern entrance of the Suez Canal. Then finally there's Tunis below us. It's a city of 2.7 million people. We land at Tunis Carthage Airport. The time zone change took us back 2 hours, but our first stop will take us back almost 3 millennia to the founding of Carthage in the 9th century BCE by the Phoenicians. We're on Birsa Hill, the remains of a walled citadel overlooking modern Tunis. Carthage fell to the Romans at the end of the Third Punic War in 146 BCE, and the city was completely destroyed. This citadel was the last holdout when the Romans captured the city. A new city of Carthage was built on the site in the mid-1st century BCE. By the 3rd century, Carthage was one of the largest cities in the Roman Empire. The Proconsul of Africa ruled from Birsa Hill. Birsa Hill was recognized as the power site by subsequent rulers. From 439 CE, the Vandals ruled from here. In 533 CE, the Byzantines recaptured the province and set up residence here. St. Louis Cathedral was built on Birsa Hill in 1884 on top of an ancient temple. St. Louis, or King Louis IX of France, died in Tunis on his way to the Eighth Crusade on August 25, 1270. Birsa Hill is also the home of the Carthage National Museum. Our next stop is the Baths of Antoninus. These baths were the largest in Africa. They were built during the reign of Emperor Antoninus Pius, 138 to 161 CE. The expansive facility featured hot, cold, and tepid baths, a large area for wrestling, 2 gymnasiums, steam rooms, a swimming pool, as well as dressing rooms. The Roman road going up from the baths is paved in marble. At the top of the road are the remains of a Byzantine basilica dating to the 6th century CE. If you look carefully, you can see mosaics that somehow have survived 1,500 years. This Punic sanctuary is a cemetery for children who were sacrificed to their god Moloch. This is the harbor that the Carthaginians used to load and unload cargo and to build and repair their ships. And we have arrived at our home for the next 2 nights. We're welcome to our room in local style with fruit and sweets. Then it's time for dinner. It's a gourmet meal that would delight a sultan. This morning we're headed south of Tunis to Testour, the picturesque town that was settled in the 1500s by Muslim and Jewish refugees from Andalusia. This gives a distinctive character to its architecture. El Bathaha Square is where the people of Testour socialize. The Great Mosque of Testour is in the Andalusian style. The clock is interesting in that it runs counterclockwise. Stars of David on the minaret are recognition of the Jewish refugees who settled here with the Muslims. More Andalusian architecture in the forecourt of the Great Mosque. Streets of Testour are filled with interesting photographs just waiting to be taken. Our guide ushers us into the Habiba Musica house. The house is named for a famous Tunisian singer of the 1920s who never set foot in the house. She was a talented musician, singer, and actress, born in 1893. Among her admirers was an old man from Testour, the How Mimoni. He was a rich patron of Habiba. He built a small palace for her in his hometown. He believed that she would recognize his generosity and marry him and come to live with him in Testour. When he finally came to realize that the marriage was not going to be, he decided to murder her by setting fire to her apartment. Her career was cut short on February 21st, 1930. She was 37 when she died. After that tragic tale, we're going back into the picturesque streets of Testour. Amazingly, we found our way back to the main street of Testour. And to no one's surprise, we find some more pictures. In El Baha Square, caged birds sing. We sit down for a snack of local cheese, dates, and bread to dip in a mixture of olive oil and honey. Now that we've been fortified, we need to get on the road again. Our next stop is Dougga. Dougga was a Berber, Punic, and Roman settlement. The current archaeological site covers 160 acres. The UNESCO World Heritage Declaration asserts that it is the best preserved Roman small town in Africa. This Punic mausoleum is one of only 3 examples of this architecture. It dates to the 2nd century BCE. The Roman theater of Dougga was built between 168 and 169. It had a capacity of 3,500. The capital is a Roman temple from the 2nd century. It was dedicated to the gods Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. On the pediment is a depiction of the Emperor Antoninus Pius, elevation to godhood. The emperor is being carried aloft by an eagle. The reason the capital is so well preserved was that it was included as part of a Byzantine fortification. Similarly, the city forum of Dougga is better preserved in places than others because it was also incorporated in part into the Byzantine fort. Looking up through the roof of the capital. Our next stop is the Temple of Juno Caelestis, seen here from an area around the capital. This temple is dedicated to the celestial Juno. It was built between 222 and 235. The semicircular wall behind the temple is 171 feet in diameter. The crescent moon is a symbol of the celestial Juno. The triumphal arch was built in 228 in gratitude to Emperor Alexander Severus for his beneficence toward the city. This olive grove by the Alexander Severus arch may be 1,000 years old. Below the temple area is the residential area, complete with a current resident. This is the Trifolium Villa, named for the clover-shaped room. It's the largest residence excavated so far at Dougga. It dates to the 2nd or 3rd century. And of course, the residential area must have a public toilet. Some things haven't changed much since Dougga was a shining city. It's time for lunch at Dar el Daoud. The cats are hungrier than we are. They're very happy when we left a lot on our plates. Now we have a long drive back to Tunis. past the wheat fields, the olive groves, with an occasional vineyard on the hillside. Tonight we're having dinner at the Dar el-Anabi Museum. The house was built in the end of the 18th century and is now a museum showing the atmosphere and lifestyle of a traditional Tunisian family of that period. We dined well on traditional Tunisian fare. In the morning, we check out of our hotel and head to Sidi Bou Said. In the 18th century, this area became a fashionable place for wealthy residents of Tunis. Today, its picturesque blue and white houses and shops make it a tourist attraction. The narrow, winding cobblestone streets can take you back in time, were it not for the cars and the souvenir shops. We're here at La Villa Bleue, a boutique hotel and restaurant, for lunch. It's some of the best eggplant parmesan I've ever eaten. Then back through the white buildings trimmed in blue. We're at Tunis Airport for our last segment of this trip. Our air crew is waiting to greet us. We owe them a special thanks for looking after us for these past 2 weeks. We settle in for our flight to London, where it all began. Snow seems a little sparse as we fly over the Alps. It's time for a toast to Susan and her team and all the people who made this trip memorable. We fly over London on our way to London Stansted Airport. Tonight our farewell dinner is on the top floor of the Four Seasons 10 Trinity Square with a view of the Tower of London and the Tower Bridge. In the morning, we're at Heathrow, waiting to board our flight back to Seattle. It's been quite a trip. We covered a lot of miles to reach the world less traveled.